So I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla around mid-2022 and then again in mid-2023, and now it's been 3 years since then, so I thought I'd do a proper updated review of the game and look back at this entry in the franchise, which came out before Mirage and Shadows. Mirage has, as we know, had a way more back to roots theme to it with a more linear gameplay style, and then Shadows returned to this more RPG element, which I still haven't played. So this entry was of course all set in 9th century England and Norway, during the Viking era, which was of course a very iconic historical time. So a bit of a switch up, just looking at the combat and the theme of it all, which I'll get into. Because you don't really think of assassins when you think of Vikings. You play as the character of Eivor as part of the Norseman clan. I mean, the open world for a start is probably one of my favourite parts, even though on the surface it may seem a bit boring, with its very repeated dull colours. But it's in England for the majority of the game, so I'm quite biased towards it. It's kinda comforting exploring a less flashy setting like this, and it feeling so familiar. It does span across several regions of England, so Wessex, Northumbria, Mercia and East Anglia, as well as the Norwegian territories, which I'm not going to try and pronounce. The game's setting just looks incredible, especially the sun rays you see as you turn every corner, with just stunning landscapes, forests and mountains, and little settlements that make you feel so immersed in this Viking world. It portrays the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons quite well, and the struggles that sort of went on with power at the time. You also get to meet and learn about historical figures such as Alfred the Great. It also does explore the Norse mythology part of it all and religion of the time, with a lot of references to different myths and rituals they did that add a bit of variety to it. But it does have a very deep narrative that goes along with the overall lore of the franchise, and Eivor is a pretty solid, I'd say, and charismatic character. Their main goal is glory and revenge, and then as you follow their journey, you eventually explore England and Norway and reveal the truth about the Assassins and Templars, which, if you don't know by now, if you haven't played any of the other games, they are basically the two societies, which are basically the heart of the Assassin's Creed series. One of the biggest strengths in this one for me is the characters and how they're developed. Eivor has their own motivations and of course conflicts as well. Then on top of that, like in Odyssey, you are able to choose to play as a male or a female, and their sort of choices and their actions throughout the game will slightly affect the story's outcome. And their personality is definitely shaped by their past, especially the key event in the start of the game in their childhood, which starts the whole revenge story. And as you progress through, you find out more problems and relationships with lots of other characters and getting to choose dialogue options, which again can affect the story. So as I mentioned, it adds a bit more depth to the character and the story and the narrative, and you do sort of feel a sense of responsibility over these decisions, which I did quite like. And the whole journey is quite compelling. And it's not just Eivor as well, the supporting characters are interesting to learn about, all of them having their own unique backstories, especially in Basim, who as we know was the main character in Mirage, the game after this one, so it's clear that he does play a big role here. There always was the criticism of the pacing of the game, and it does have a slow start to it with a lengthy prologue. If that may feel a bit tedious to some players, then I can see why. The whole quest navigation and how much it throws at you, it's easy to let the game switch focus and go off track at times with the numerous subplots and side quests. I'm one to focus on the main story and just doing side quests here and there, but it's like the game doesn't want you to do that. The actual main quest navigation and how you kick it off is done through the Longhouse and on the Alliance map, and you can basically do them in any order based on region, which was interesting, I must say. It got a bit of getting used to doing that, and I'm sure it will be the same for fans of the older and more linear titles. The main conflict though between the Assassins and the Templars, it is present in this game as I said, but it's always been a central theme, and I think it sort of took a step back in this one. It tends to focus a bit more on Eivor as a character and their personal journey and the conflicts of that era, which I didn't mind because it was different, and I've definitely gotten very used to that other narrative because I played all the other games and in order as well. So it was nice to have a switch in this one, and either way it was still there. To others it may be a bit more disappointing because they could have been expecting a more prominent Assassin Templar storyline. A big aspect people love to bring up and surround the game with is all the supernatural elements it has, so all the over-the-top mythology characters and their powers, which I'll speak more about, but also the visions feature was another thing they added, which can feel a bit confusing I guess, and maybe a bit of a disconnection from the historical accuracy and take away from that main immersion of it all. But that's just a small example. Despite that, depending on how much you focus on them, the actual story as a whole is well put together, and it does offer a fresh take on the lore with its unique Viking theme. And if you wanted like a lengthy and rich narrative with fairly well done characters and want to learn about the time period, then you'll most likely find it quite enjoyable by the end of it, if you can get through the more slow parts in the early game. I do want to talk about the revamped combat system it has due to the theme, so it combines both melee and ranged combat, so a bit of a variety in there. It's way more brutal though and heavy styled, so weapons like axes and shields, but still the classic swords and the bows, getting to blend in special abilities and very similar to Odyssey I suppose. Probably a bit more to choose from. The tanky and that heavy combat though definitely matches the Viking theme with very weighty weapons and impactful animations, so it's more intense compared to any other game in the series probably. It strays away from the dancey and clean combat of Brotherhood or Black Flag, which felt so satisfying because it was so slick. But then again, it's still going to be satisfying swinging axes and stomping enemies, at least I think it was, but you're still going to see the complaints of it not feeling like an Assassin's Creed game. One of the strengths is the ability to dual wield weapons, allowing you to combine different weapon types and different fighting styles, adding that layer of customization and some variety to the combat. Same with switching between weapons on the fly, that was another thing, and adapting your playstyle to certain situations. So it's quite fun in that way. The progression system is still here to level up your character, like in all of the RPG games like in Origins and Odyssey, so it does improve the combat abilities and again, way more customization with your gear and different upgrades to become way more powerful. Because of course the enemies do level up as you go. Depending on if you prefer the RPG style, I'm sure it can be a bit of a grind to some people and a bit time consuming to level up. A big part of gameplay that focuses on that Viking theme is the ability to raid camps and do large scale battles with your clan. The same with the animal and fish hunting and just collecting resources and, you know, find out little side stories. Now the parkour system, which has of course been a staple of the series this entire time, it still is a part of the game obviously, but nowhere near like it was, and that was expected from a game about Vikings. It can feel clunky and inconsistent in terms of movement, and that can be a bit frustrating at times for some people I'd imagine, especially when it's in those fast-paced encounters and when you want it to look fun and free-flowing. When moving through more built-up environments I suppose, I think it would be a bigger complaint if you had that quite a bit, and if it had the same setting as like Florence or something, where there's tons of close together buildings. But a big part of this world is the endless fields and the hills with a few settlements dotted around, so to me I don't see it as a major deal. Speaking of settlements, there's the settlement management part where you can build and upgrade your base, which I found quite fun actually, just by getting materials from the raids that you do. You can also recruit new members to improve your clan. I also loved the little activities in the camp, like the Orlog board game. It adds a strategic element to the gameplay in terms of the settlement stuff, as you need to manage your inventory and your resources and decide what to upgrade yourself. It doesn't just do it for you after each mission. It's quite customizable, and I think it just offers a fresh setting and feel to the game with that whole Viking era. The same goes with the combat style and the more spread out open world. So it builds upon the RPG elements introduced in Odyssey and stuff, but it also keeps some of the franchise's roots, like the Assassin v Templar conflict, even though it isn't as present. The lengthy narrative and at times a bit slow pacing, the same with the far-fetched mythological element, which again was seen in Odyssey, and they didn't hold back because of it. That part has definitely become a lot bigger in Valhalla, and that's even more obvious in the expansions to the game, which did add new content. So one of the biggest being, I think, the Wraith of the Druids or something, which actually takes you to a whole new island and you unravel a whole new mystery. So quite a good amount of content added, and quite a bit for players who want more after completing the main story, which is quite big in itself, as we know. And then another one being the Siege of Paris, which, as you guessed, it is going to focus on France and the Siege of Paris. I don't really have a better way to describe it, and I also haven't played it myself. But again, new enemies and new settings and new weapons. But then there's even more in terms of the mythological side with the Dawn of Ragnarok, where it gets a bit ropey. So quite a bit, and I'm sure there's others. It was already a massive game, as I said, and they're still adding more and updating it. Bug fixes included, of course, running a lot smoother than launch. Again, these are paid DLCs, so I've heard people complain about the prices and how they should have already been part of the base game, but like I said, there's so much without the DLCs. It is difficult because I haven't played them, but they may or may not be worth the price tag they have, I'm not sure. I'm sure some of them are on sale. So as a whole, it is still an immersive experience and definitely isn't the worst game in the franchise for sure. Of course, it always depends on personal preference, but I enjoyed it myself, whether that be the first time around or looking back at it now. So those players who enjoy historical, open world RPG games, and especially liking Vikings, will definitely love it. Those who prefer the linear titles, well, I think you sort of knew before clicking on the video that this is far from that, and hopefully by me describing the game a bit and giving my thoughts, you can decide if it's worth your time. I'd say be a bit open-minded, but that is where I end my review of Assassin's Creed Valhalla in 2026. If you did enjoy this video, let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy single player and multiplayer games as well, then that's what this channel does focus on. I have many playlists on a selection of games, so you can subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you want to support me any further, you can become a member of the channel at either level 1 or 2 to gain access to various perks. And for anyone that does drink G Fuel, you can use my code COWSY at checkout to get some discount on your order. Thank you all for the support and watching until the very end, and that was Valhalla in 2026, and bye bye.